everyone has a life, everyone loves Star Wars, and more than that, everybody loves to watch a middle-aged man draw. So it's time for me to draw my Star Wars life. Taking this whiteboard right here and a couple of pens, I'm going to draw my Star Wars life. Now a warning, I can't draw at all. I can't even hardly spell. So if you think this is going to be the next Bob Ross video, it's not. But let's do it. Let's draw my Star Wars life. Well, let's not talk about the whole life. Let's talk about from 1977 to 1990 with my Star Wars life. Let's go. Well, let's start with 1977, and that's right, we saw Star Wars. It wasn't May 25th, but it was 1977, around that summertime. It was me and my big brother. Somebody took us. I'm not really sure. Might have been my grandparents, probably. I'm not really sure. But it was the summer of 1977. I'm sure of that. But although I saw Star Wars, I wasn't completely happy. I know, shocking. I wanted toys, but there were no toys. I had a Star Wars coloring book, a puzzle, and a necklace. That was about all the stuff I had, but I wanted toys. Then came 1978. Finally, I was happy because we were getting Star Wars toys. After hearing much about them, they were finally in stores. My brother got a scoop that the local store had toys out on the shelf. So we headed to Zayre's to buy Star Wars toys. I was so excited, I couldn't hardly stand it. Me and my brother was there at Sears, and I'm 95% sure that my grandparents took us. I'm sure my parents didn't. They had better things to do with their time, I guess. So we went into Zayre's, and I couldn't believe it. It looked huge, and they had a land speeder, a Death Star playset, a dewback, but most of all, they had the figures all on pegs. I couldn't believe it. There were so many of them. Who was I get? I couldn't decide. It was just too much. It was too much information to take in. There were 12 different figures. Who would I get? I didn't know at all. But my brother, he had a game plan. Before we even got there, he knew who he wanted. Obi-Wan Kenobi. But who would I get? I wanted Obi-Wan Kenobi, but only because I wanted him to think I was cool and wanted to play with my Obi-Wan. So who could I get? Who could I get if I couldn't get Obi-Wan? I had to get something so cool that my brother would want to play with it, and I could play with his Obi-Wan Kenobi. He told me C-3PO was cool, so I decided right then, yes, C-3PO was cool, and I would get it. I couldn't wait. I finally had a Star Wars figure all to myself. Finally, after about a year, I got a Star Wars figure. So there we were in the car headed home, my brother with his Obi-Wan Kenobi and me with my C-3PO. That's when my brother told me Han Solo was cooler and that I should have bought a Han Solo action figure. And I couldn't believe it. I was so crushed. I started to cry. I wasted my time getting a 3PO. But between 1978 and 1979, all we did was play Star Wars. He would have more figures than me. Not really sure. He seemed like he always got the cool ones, and I got stuck with ones like R5D4. But I finally had a plan to get an action figure better than my brother had. That's right. I went to my grandma to tell her that I knew how to get a free Star Wars action figure. All I had to do was cut out these proof of purchases to get a free Boba Fett. I was so excited. I would get a cool figure long before my brother did. So I waited by the mailbox. And when I say I waited by the mailbox, I mean I waited by the mailbox almost every day. It seemed like it took 2 years, but it really took probably about 10 weeks. But that was the 10 longest weeks of my life. Well, I always went to my grandparents' house on the weekend. But I decided this weekend to go hang out with my friend Boyd because he wanted to go to a birthday party, and I went too, thinking Amy might be there. And where did my brother go? He went to my grandmother's house. And I think you can guess what happened next. The mailman showed up. That's right, the mailman showed up with the Boba Fett action figure that I have been waiting by the mailbox for forever. And guess who got it? My brother. He went to the mailbox and pulled out the Boba Fett and was all excited. And I didn't get anything. What my brother explained to me about his Boba Fett was that, hey, I cut out his proof of purchases, so it was his Boba Fett and not mine. And I was sad. 1980. I was happy. I had a lot of Star Wars toys, and finally I had about 14 figures that were all to myself. But I had to go to a new school. I was kind of worried. New school, and I didn't know anyone except for my friend Boyd. Everyone else was new. There was a teacher that sat behind a desk and a bunch of kids that liked to talk about schoolwork instead of talk about Star Wars. But I all knew how to win over new friends. I was going to show that I love Star Wars with my Star Wars shirt, my Star Wars lunchbox, and my Star Wars backpack. That's the ugliest backpack I've ever seen. I cannot draw at all. Sorry about that. But all the other kids had different kind of shirts. It didn't have shirts about their love for Star Wars. It had numbers on it, and baseballs and footballs and soccer balls and golf balls. I didn't understand what was going on. It was the craziest thing I ever seen. No one wanted to talk Star Wars. They wanted to talk about sports. But I found something else that I think I loved more than Star Wars at this time, a goddess of love. Her name was Amy, and to me, I understood finally why Han Solo loved Princess Leia. But I had a plan to win her heart, and it was one that couldn't fail. I was going to show her my brand new Tauntaun toy, and I knew Amy was going to be excited and want to marry me right then and there. She said it was so cute, and I was finally excited. She talked to me, and she liked my Tauntaun. But then John showed up with his baseball hat, his baseball glove, and his bat, and she went crazy. She really loved sports. Well, not sports. She loved guys that play sports. I'm not sure why. So I was sad, but I didn't care because honestly, at home I had a lot of Star Wars toys. So, did I really need Amy? I had a new Tauntaun. Did I need anything else? And no, I didn't need anything else, but at this time I was falling in love with someone else also. And his name was Indiana Jones. I was obsessed with Indiana Jones, although I didn't really have the toys except for one or two. I loved Indiana Jones. Now let's skip ahead to 1984. And my love for Star Wars continued. That was until a man in a red suit showed up and gave me He-Man toys. I didn't want He-Man toys, but all of a sudden I was in love. I couldn't believe it. He-Man toys, and I started watching the cartoon. I loved He-Man, and Star Wars kinda went by the wayside. I thought I was He-Man. I loved everything I could. I watched the cartoon, yelled Power of Grayskull every chance I got, and told everyone I had the power. I loved He-Man. But then something else strange happened. Between 1985 and 1989, I grew up. And I started getting hair in places I didn't even know I could get hair. And I started noticing girls that wasn't Amy, of course. And I started listening to music. That's a horrible music sign. Looks like a dollar sign. Anyway, Star Wars went by the wayside. And it seemed to everyone that I hung out with and went to school with that I didn't care about Star Wars. I was into cool stuff like music. But secretly, at home, I wore my Star Wars pajamas, and I still played with my Star Wars Tauntaun, and I still had my Star Wars figures. I loved Star Wars. And then the 90s came. But we'll save that. We'll save that for part 2.
Hey, Junkman channel popping though.
Thank you, sir, for that unsolicited testimony.